this pipeline could already be a zombie pipeline. Dead man walking.
The Keystone Pipeline was built as a way to move oil from the tar sands of Canada to the Gulf of Mexico.
Hearing none, the ayes are 62, the nays are 36. Senate Bill 1, as amended, is passed.
Even with Senate approval to authorize construction, the plan was vetoed by President Obama in February. The president would snuff any last hope for the pipeline in November after years of delay.
While our politics have been consumed by a debate over whether or not this pipeline would create jobs and lower gas prices, we've gone ahead and created jobs and lowered gas prices.
Although not directly tied to lower prices for crude oil, the late-year drop below $2 for gasoline was the lowest at the pumps since 2009. Crude oil would teeter under $40 for much of December, 18 months removed from the $100 per barrel price. In November, the United States had the most oil in reserves since 1972. Coupled with OPEC continuing to flood the market with product, oil-producing states of North Dakota and Oklahoma face a dire start to the new year, even with the help of the federal government opening the doors for black gold exports. Economists in Middle America cited a stronger U.S. dollar and lower oil prices were limiting imminent economic optimism.
The manufacturing sector either linked to agriculture, energy, or exports, or in some cases, two of the three. Those areas are having a real tough time of it.
Some producers look to new trade agreements to bolster foreign demand. The passage of the Trans-Pacific Partnership by several countries is still without U.S. approval. Congress has yet to decide if boosting trade is worth the potential loss of jobs that move overseas. Another world meeting aimed to change culture, or in this case, climate. A deal between 195 nations was reached at the United Nations Climate Change Summit held in Paris. The landmark accord vows to lower greenhouse gas emissions as a way to stave off drastic climate change effects. India's Prime Minister continued his claim the problem isn't solely the fault of the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases.
We have to ensure, in the spirit of climate justice, that the life of a few does not crowd out the opportunities for the many still on the initial steps of the development ladder.
Winter brought snow in the normal and non-traditional locations, like a foot of snow in Alabama, breaking records set in the 1890s. California's drought drug on for a fourth season, again crippling a region and racking up at least $3 billion in damages. Congress held hearings to see what assistance could help and what options were viable.
Water conservation is not going to create a new supply for a new demand, but it certainly can lead to saving water, be able to putting that in storage, maintaining flexibility in the situation.
As further conservation plans were implemented, tough choices were made across the Golden State.
This year, for the first time, growers within Merced Irrigation District will get no water from Lake McClure. Their only water that they will have access to is groundwater. Some of our growers have private wells that they'll be able to use, and some of our growers are in areas that they can get access to MID's wells, where we're going to be pumping a minimal amount of groundwater, but it's a mere fraction of what they would depend on typically from this lake.
Water has long been a contentious issue in California as rural and urban interests collided over the precious resource. Mandatory reductions were experienced by 77,000 farmers and 38.5 million residents, sparking water rights battles and even the dusting off of old technology in an attempt to find new water.
We know this drought will end one day. Mother Nature's not telling us when, but it will. And we know on a future date we'll have another drought. And the question is there a role for desalinated water during the interim?
Graham Gillette.
Aye.
Susan Huppert. Aye. Mark Wallace.
And a case of what's in the water had many in the Corn Belt put on notice.
We're very confident that these are clear point source groundwater polluters that are coming from agricultural use.
The water plant in Iowa's largest city sued 3 northwest Iowa counties upstream over pollution from agricultural runoff. The Des Moines Waterworks suit survived one legal challenge and is being watched all over the United States to see if this litigation sets precedent. Meanwhile, the Waters of the United States rule was upheld by a court of appeals, further defining what bodies of water are under federal regulator jurisdiction.
Our goal in this rule is very straightforward. It's to respond to requests from stakeholders across the country to make the process of identifying waters protected under the Clean Water Act easier to understand.
What was hard for some federal officials to grasp early this spring was how H5N2, or avian flu, was spreading from farm to farm and causing $3 billion in lost revenue. The deadly bird flu slammed turkey and chicken producers in 15 states. More than 48 million birds died from the virus or were euthanized in an attempt to curtail its spread. Barns on infected farms were emptied and fallowed for months. Producers had to wait for the green light to get back into the poultry business.
So we are excited to be back in the turkey industry today, and I would say there's 3 words that describe how we feel on this farm moving forward. We're excited, we're encouraged, and we're optimistic.
Any one of these stories could be a headline maker again in 2016, but we'll have to wait and see. For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.